A fifth Sly Cooper game would be superfluous. I know that's a hot take in a community as deprived as the Sly one, but before you dislike the video, please hear me out. Let's stop and consider the simple reality of the series' cliffhanger. There isn't much you can actually do for a full-on game. The Egypt DLC for Sly 4 was meant to be just that, a single DLC chapter, so tell me, how exactly do you make a game around this? Some fans have ideas, but upon inspection, I don't think any would make a worthy game. If the idea is to set a full game solely in ancient Egypt, then this would run contrary to Sly's fundamental level structure that's been in place since the very beginning. What do I mean by that? Well, to me at least, a big part of the Sly games' identity is the globe-trotting adventures. Think about it. Throughout all 4 games, we go to Haiti, Egypt, China, Canada, Japan, the US, Czechia, Italy, and so much more. Whittling this down to just ancient Egypt would not provide the needed variety in levels that fans expect from a Sly game. I'm sure you could get away with making a super detailed and large open world to make this work, but for most Sly fans, I think having new countries and places to explore is a feature that's non-negotiable. Second, regarding the story, how exactly would you pace this game's plot? The section in Egypt could work perfectly fine with a competent director, but remember, Sly still needs to be rescued. Simply having cutscenes that show what the gang is doing in the present would be terrible pacing for a video game. You'd essentially just be breaking the flow of the main story for what's essentially a goose chase to find out when and where Sly is. So okay then, why not just have levels where we play as Bentley, Murray, and Carmelita in the present? Well, that sounds reasonable until you consider one critical problem. Who exactly would be the villains and who would we fight? The villains are some of the most iconic parts of the series, and any segment of this hypothetical game set in the present has next to zero room for it. The reality is, Sly is just lost. There are no villains you can write in to make this make sense, and La Paradox is already beat, and even if you take this chance to resolve the Penelope mystery, she would still have no idea where Sly is either, so it's all just back to the same dead end. And really, that defines the entire problem with this cliffhanger and is likely a strong reason why there isn't a Sly 5. Sanzaru backed the game into a literary wall. And what a shame too, because an ancient Egypt level could be awesome. We could have met Slightencom, found out Clockwork's origin, and maybe even learnt some unique movesets only Sly's Egyptian ancestors could have known, but that simply isn't possible. So, okay then, I'm clearly incapable of figuring out a solution to the Sly 5 problem. What about other people within the community on, say, the Sly Cooper subreddit? Well, look in there, I'm not really impressed. A lot of the responses, or lack thereof, basically boil down to pretending either Thieves in Time doesn't exist, or in some way reversing its plot. I'm just gonna dump this here right now, but that is a terrible idea. Firstly, like it or not, Thieves in Time is canon, and it's not anywhere near as bad of a game as people make it out to be, but that's a whole other video. Is the writing cringe and off base? Yes, but the gameplay and world design is some of the best in the series, and it gave us Tennessee Kid Cooper, so it's not all bad. Second, starting a game with Bentley going back in time to destroy the time machine to reverse everything is pretty jarring. Remember, there will be people who play this hypothetical Sly 5 and it'll be their introduction to the series, which isn't a good look. And even so, it still leaves us with a glaring problem. Sly retired after the 3rd game. What exactly do you want to do with the series after that? This isn't even a game, it's just a short, maybe 20-minute TV show episode that reverses the course into nothing. The only idea I found I think is actually good is this one here. I think the idea that Sly would leave hints about his whereabouts for the gang to find in the present is a phenomenal idea. It makes good use of the time travel, and it would make a compelling plot. The only issue is I can't see this fitting into a Sly Cooper video game. A TV series or a movie? 100%. But a game? No. And I'm not even going to talk about that terrible time plot hole with Clockwork right there. And really, this is the most sensible plot to work with, but unless you want to fundamentally change what a Sly Cooper game is and how it plays, which would be to uproot its entire identity, this idea simply can't work for a game. To try and do so would simply be about as much of a lost cause as the war for Malvinas. So with that in mind, I have my own solutions. There are one of three paths I could see that would resolve the cliffhanger: a comic, a short series, or a movie. I think using the general plot idea with Sly leaving clues is a great place to start, so my propositions will revolve around that. Starting with the movie, a 1.5 hour feature-length film would probably be the perfect length to wrap up where Thieves in Time left off. The biggest advantage of a movie is that if paced properly, you can really balance the story out between Sly and the gang's perspectives. You also have ample time to flesh out the characters for any new audience, and best of all, you would generate some level of hype for the series in one big swoop at the box office. Similarly, a lot of the same advantages would exist for a miniseries that spans a full season. The big difference here would be the more episodic format, which is already an iconic format of the Sly series. By focusing on episodes rather than a full-length film as well, you could make the pacing easier, and you'd have consistent hype for each new airing. Entire episodes could just be dedicated to Sly's time in Egypt or the gang's time in the modern world, with the finale being Sly finally getting rescued. However, one severe issue exists with both of these propositions, and it's the simple fact they're extremely expensive and time-consuming to create for largely the benefit of pleasing a very small fan base. From an economic standpoint, these ideas make zero sense. So I think the best solution in terms of cost effectiveness that still wraps up the series would be a comic. Any fan of Sly knows comics are a huge inspiration for the games, even down to the art style, and we even have precedent for this already because official canon Sly comics are a thing you can read, so this would work in every department. It would be cheap to produce, fans would 100% indulge, and it gives us the conclusion we deserve. What's nice for Sony too is the fact you don't even need to release a single comic. You could break this adventure up into multiple comics to get more sales and thus more money from the fans. If there was ever to be a mass calling for Sony to finish the series, this would be the way to go. Now of course, whilst that would be nice, there's another thing Sly fans want: reviving the series. For this to occur, I think the first step needs to be porting all of the games to modern hardware, and we actually got this in the form of the original trilogy being emulated on the PS5. This is a great first step to reviving the series, however, it's still missing Thieves in Time, and I would prefer a proper port, personally. I won't spend too much time dwelling on this, but ports would allow Sony to actually decompress the original game's cutscenes, audio, and uncap the frame rate all natively. As it stands now, emulation in general is prone to some wonky visual errors, whereas a real modern remaster wouldn't have these troubles. Just remember to resize the cutscene barriers. Another good thing about ports too is we could bring Sly to PC. PC is more or less the ultimate form of preservation for a video game, as once something's on PC, it goes nowhere. You'd also have all the games opened up to modding, which would further serve to keep Sly's community going. And on the topic of community, I am positive there are a lot of Sly fans who would love to play the games again, but simply don't because they've long moved on from console gaming. We live in an age now where PC gaming is the predominant means to engage with the hobby, so taking advantage of this market and getting their sales would help Sony a lot rather than gatekeeping the series to PlayStation hardware. I know for a fact I would buy all 4 Sly games if they were on Steam, but there is no way in hell I'm buying a PS5 for it, so PC emulation it is. Anyways, I'm gonna stop now before I ramble further, but the next logical step for Sony to take is a reboot of Sly 1. The game sets up the characters and Sly's background perfectly, and it wouldn't make sense to start a reboot anywhere else. The main focus of a Sly 1 reboot should be giving it the same depth and gameplay as its successors, because Sly 1 loses out on a lot of love for the simple fact it's a more generic PS2 platformer. we could get a proper open world just like the rest of the series, and because modern hardware is basically limitless, you can expand on the characters a lot more. Let us recon Mugshot, give us the bugged radio conversations from Sly 2, and have ThiefNet and all the improvements from future iterations. Show new fans what Sly is all about and catch their interest with an improvement of the original game. And after that, you can really go in any direction you want with the series. Entirely new plots are possible, TV series, more comics, rebooting Sly 2 to come up with something better than Clock Law. It's all possible. But unfortunately, this is all just a thought experiment. But one thing stands, the #1 priority for Sly needs to be wrapping up Thieves in Times' cliffhanger. Personally, and I said this earlier, I think the best solution to sell Sony on this would be the fanbase collectively arguing for a comic series.